Imagine you are tasked with cleaning up a shattered glass.
Right.
Your instinct, like your ultimate goal, might be to somehow glue all those microscopic shards back together. To perfectly unbreak the glass so it looks exactly like it did before it fell.
Sure, yeah. Make it whole again.
Right. But the catch is, the glass was already broken before you even entered the room. You literally can't make it whole again. All you can really do is carefully, painstakingly, sweep up the pieces so that no one else gets cut.
Yeah, that's such a vivid way to put it.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a concept that completely flips how we view caregiving, crisis, and human suffering.
It really does.
So for someone like you listening today who loves gaining profound knowledge, but, doesn't want to be overwhelmed by the jargon, this topic is a literal game changer. We're exploring a single, incredibly poignant source document today.
Yeah.
It's titled, What a DSL Can Learn From a Hospice Nurse. Now, just to establish our terms right out of the gate, a DSL is a designated safeguarding lead. That's the professional in a school or educational setting whose specific job is to protect children and young people from harm.
And that role, it carries an immense, often invisible weight.
Oh, absolutely.
They are the frontline responders when a student is facing abuse or neglect, severe trauma, or, the fallout of a messy family breakdown.
Yeah.
The author of this text actually maps the framework of end-of-life care, specifically the practical, everyday wisdom of a hospice nurse directly onto the role of that school safeguarding lead.
Which sounds wild at first.
Right. But it forces us to ask, what happens when the damage is already done?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the foundational hook here challenges literally everything we usually assume about intervening in a crisis.
Yeah, it really does.
The text starts with a reality that a hospice nurse understands implicitly, which is not every situation can be cured. Sometimes the harm has already happened. The outcome can't be magically reversed, and, well, the future's still going to contain pain or loss.
And that realization requires a fundamental shift in how we define a successful intervention.
Right.
Because in a medical hospice setting, the central question has already changed. It is no longer about asking, can this illness be completely fixed?
Because the medical community has already said it can't.
Exactly. They've determined it cannot. So the new mandate becomes, how do we reduce suffering, preserve dignity, and ensure this person doesn't face this reality alone?
Wow.
And applying that specific lens to child protection in schools completely redefines what it means to help.
Which is such a massive pivot.
Yeah.
Because when you think about a professional working in a school, a safeguarding lead, their entire mandate feels like it should be the exact opposite.
Right, the hero narrative.
Yeah, you expect them to be the hero who swoops in, stops the bad thing from happening, and, restores the child's life to normal.
Well, the broader societal expectation of leadership and care is completely wrapped up in that exact hero narrative.
Totally.
Safeguarding professionals carry this massive unspoken pressure to prevent everything, to solve every single situation and put the pieces back exactly where they belong.
Right.
But the grim reality is that DSLs very rarely get there in time to prevent the initial harm.
Yeah.
They usually meet students after the trauma has already occurred, after the exploitation has started, after the irreversible emotional harm is already done.
So the mission of this deep dive today is to explore what compassionate, ethical care actually looks like within that serious, unfixable reality.
Exactly.
Because if you meet the student after the damage is done, you can't be their time machine.
No, you can't. You have to move from the illusion of prevention to navigating the messy aftermath. And the text breaks this down by drawing a hard line between cure and care. They are not the same thing. In a hospice, care doesn't mean ignoring or eliminating the reality of the illness. It focuses on comfort and humanity within that illness.
Right.
Translated to a school environment, it means accepting that success isn't always measured by complete resolution. Some harm simply cannot be erased by, a really good meeting or a thorough intervention plan.
Wait, but let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
If I'm hired to protect kids, doesn't accepting that I can't, fix the problem just mean I'm giving up?
That's the trap.
Right. Because if you tell a safeguarding lead to stop trying to cure the issue, aren't they basically just throwing their hands in the air and saying, oh, well, nothing we can do?
Yeah, and that tension is exactly what the author anticipates.
Okay.
But giving up implies a withdrawal of effort. Shifting from cure to care is actually an intensification of effort, but it's just directed differently.
How so?
Well, the text addresses this by pointing out a really harsh truth. Doing the right thing does not always feel emotionally satisfying.
Oh, well.
Right. Sometimes a DSL makes all the right ethical interventions, and the situation remains tragic. The family is still distressed. The outcome is still incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Making the right safeguarding decision might actually hurt relationships, create immediate conflict, and leave a lot of sadness behind.
I can definitely see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I mean, doing the right thing for a child's long-term safety might mean calling social services, which, completely fractures the family dynamic in the short term.
Exactly.
The child might even be angry at you for making that call.
That happens frequently. It might mean reporting a parent, which terrifies the child.
God, that's heavy.
It is. The ethical leadership required here means carrying that emotional discomfort. The professional has to accept that protecting the child is more important than their own desire for a neat, happy ending where everybody hugs and says thank you.
Wow.
You aren't giving up. You are choosing the painful reality of care over the comfortable fantasy of a cure. You're stepping into the mess rather than trying to wave a magic wand over it.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because if the professional has to accept they cannot magically fix the situation, and they had to sit with all this unresolved pain, and sometimes even the anger of the student they're helping,
Right.
what are the actionable steps they are actually supposed to take? Like, if you can't cure, how do you actively care?
The document answers this by highlighting the immense value of presence through a concept called relational endurance.
Relational endurance.
Yeah. It means staying calm, staying emotionally available, and crucially not disappearing when the situation becomes incredibly difficult or confrontational.
Right.
A child in crisis knows they are in crisis. They know their life is chaotic. What they are desperately looking for is an adult who doesn't flinch.
Someone who just stays.
Exactly. An adult who doesn't run away or emotionally shut down when the reality gets ugly.
So relational endurance in practice might look like a student lashing out, maybe throwing chairs or completely shutting down,
Yeah.
and the adult just refusing to be scared away. The adult regulating their own nervous system to show the kid, I am still here. Your trauma isn't too much for me.
That's a perfect illustration, because while they are staying in the room and maintaining that endurance, they are doing something else vital.
Which is?
They are preserving the student's dignity.
Ah.
Just as hospice care is fiercely dedicated to preserving a patient's choice and humanity as their physical body fails, safeguarding must avoid reducing students to mere cases or problems to be managed.
Right.
When a child is going through severe trauma, they are highly vulnerable to losing their entire identity to that trauma.
Let me ask you a probing question about that, though.
Go ahead.
How difficult is it in practice to actually maintain a student's identity beyond their trauma?
Oh, it's incredibly difficult.
Right, because when you're a DSL, you're constantly managing risk assessments, legal documents, police reports, multi-agency meetings. How do you stop the risk from becoming their defining label?
I feel like the system itself seems designed to categorize them as, the abuse case or the runaway.
It absolutely is. It is a constant uphill battle against the momentum of the system.
Yeah.
To protect their humanity, the professional have to be fiercely intentional with very specific applications.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, strictly respecting confidentiality.
Sure.
This means actively shutting down staff from gossip. You do not allow a child's tragedy to become water cooler entertainment for other teachers.
Oh, man, that happens so much.
It really does. Second, it requires using compassionate language in all those reports and meetings you mentioned. Words shape reality.
Give me an example of how language changes things in that context.
So instead of writing, the student is a chronic runaway and highly manipulative.
Which sounds so clinical and judgmental.
Exactly.
Wow.
A dignity-preserving report says, the student frequently leaves the premises to cope with overwhelming situations and struggles to trust adult interventions.
The facts are the same, but the latter treats them as a human experiencing trauma, not a human who is a problem.
That's a huge shift.
And the third application is consciously avoiding public exposure of their struggles.
Right.
You don't pull a kid out of a crowded classroom in a way that signals to everyone that they are in trouble or in crisis. You protect their narrative.
That distinction in language is so critical. It completely shifts the lens. But thinking about the reality of doing this day in and day out, like practicing that kind of relational endurance, constantly policing the language of other staff members to shield a student's dignity, staying perfectly calm while navigating irreversible harm.
It's a lot.
It requires a massive ongoing output of emotional energy from the professional.
It is an exhausting output, and this naturally leads to the internal toll this work takes on the professionals themselves.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how the text defines professional maturity.
Okay.
It describes it as the ability to tolerate uncertainty, sadness, and imperfection without emotionally withdrawing from the person in front of you.
That feels like it goes against basic human nature, honestly.
It does.
Because our instinct, when we see someone in pain, is to immediately stop the pain.
It is basically a physiological reflex.
Yeah.
Think about touching a hot stove. Your immediate, undeniable instinct is to pull your hand away instantly to stop the pain.
Exactly.
In a psychological sense, when we witness intense human suffering, our hot stove reflex is to try and quickly solve the problem.
Right.
But we often do that not just for the other person, but to relieve our own discomfort. We hate feeling helpless.
Oh, that is so true. We just want to fix it so we don't have to feel bad anymore.
Precisely. This framework asks you to keep your hand near the heat. It asks you to resist the urge to offer a cheap solution just so you can escape the sadness. You have to sit with the discomfort.
But keeping your hand near the hot stove eventually causes burns.
Yes, it does.
You can't just absorb that much ambient heat without taking damage.
Which is exactly why the author explores the inevitability of compassion fatigue.
Ah.
Constant exposure to suffering, exactly like absorbing that ambient heat, leads to profound emotional exhaustion.
Right.
When a professional's nervous system can no longer handle the unfixable pain, it initiates a protective detachment.
They just shut down.
They do. The professional subconsciously pulls away, becomes cynical, or just emotionally goes numb to survive. They struggle with the accumulated weight of holding everyone else's trauma, which ultimately leads to severe burnout.
So how does the person survive that?
Good question.
Because you can't just tell someone, hey, keep your hand near the fire, practice relational endurance, and try not to burn out. That's not a strategy.
No, it's not. The source stresses that sustained safeguarding requires robust structural and systemic support.
Okay.
It cannot just be an exercise in individual resilience. The mechanisms for this include providing reflective spaces and actual safeguarding supervision.
Let's break that down a bit. How does a reflective space or supervision actually stop the hot stove reflex from burning someone out?
They act as a psychological pressure valve. In clinical supervision, a DSL isn't just complaining about their day. They are guided by another trained professional to process the emotional weight they've absorbed.
So it's very structured.
Exactly. It allows them to separate their own emotional triggers from the child's trauma. Without that structured processing, the emotions get repressed. And repressed emotions turn into that cynical numbness we talked about.
Right, right.
It also requires peer support structures and, fundamentally, leadership that actually recognizes emotional labor as real work.
Okay, so we've drawn these incredibly deep parallels between hospices and schools and the emotional toll on the caregivers. But we have to be careful here, right? We have to look at the boundaries of this analogy to avoid applying the wrong framework to a child's life.
Absolutely.
Because schools are obviously not end-of-life environments.
Yeah.
If we push this comparison too far, couldn't the school become, like, fatalistic and just accept every bad situation as terminal?
The author explicitly warns against that trap in a section called The Honest Bit, where the hospice nurse analogy breaks down.
Oh, perfect.
It is vital that DSLs do not walk away with a fatalistic view. The reality is that many safeguarding situations do improve significantly with the right intervention.
Right.
A child removed from an abusive home can heal. A family given the right resources can stabilize.
It's the fundamental difference between a medical palliative framework and an educational framework.
Exactly that. A hospice is dealing with the acceptance of a terminal physical reality. The goal is entirely comfort at the end of life.
Yeah.
But a DSL is operating in an environment of human development. A school's focus is on protection, future growth, and long-term recovery.
Right.
So the takeaway isn't to say, nothing can be done, let's just make them comfortable while their life falls apart.
The goal is to say, when we hit the absolute limit of what can be magically fixed today, we don't abandon the care.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is really a blueprint for how to build a compassionate safeguarding culture. It's a system-level question for any leadership team. Does a school's culture only value successful outcomes? Do they only celebrate the DSL when a case is officially closed, the problem is solved, and the student's grades are back up?
When everything is tied up with a nice little bow.
Exactly. Or does that leadership also recognize and reward the profound importance of compassionate care when things remain messy and complex?
Because if a school only rewards the cures, they are inadvertently punishing the staff who are doing the grueling, invisible, long-term work of relational endurance with the students whose lives can't be easily fixed.
That is the danger. The text points to trauma-informed support and well-being literacy as the developmental pathways a school needs to implement.
Wait, before we go further, what does well-being literacy actually look like on a random Tuesday for a busy teacher?
Good question.
Because it sounds like a great buzzword, but how does it function in reality?
Well-being literacy means giving staff the actual vocabulary and safety to articulate their mental state accurately. On a random Tuesday, it means a teacher can go to their principal and say, I am experiencing secondary trauma from managing the student's disclosures, and I need a coverage adjustment to regulate my nervous system.
Wow, just directly like that?
Yes, rather than just saying, I'm tired and pushing through until they break, it's about building a humane system from the top down so staff can provide relational endurance to the students.
So what does this all mean? We've journeyed through this profound text, taking the practical, deeply human wisdom of end-of-life care and bringing it into the turbulent developmental world of a school.
Yeah.
What it ultimately teaches us is that presence, dignity, and compassion matter profoundly. They matter even when outcomes are stubbornly difficult. They matter even when the harm cannot be fully repaired. We don't have to pretend that every story ends neatly to justify the importance of the work. Sometimes, just sweeping at the glass is enough.
The author actually leaves the reader with one final reflection, a standard to measure themselves against.
What is it?
The text asks, when safeguarding situations in my setting cannot be fully fixed, are we still ensuring students experience dignity, compassion, and consistent care rather than emotional abandonment?
That's powerful.
That question is the defining standard of ethical, humane care in any setting.
It really is a standard that changes how you view your responsibilities. And I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
We've spent this time talking about this in the context of schools, designated professionals, and institutional safeguarding. But what if we applied this care over cure framework to our everyday personal lives?
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about a time when a friend is going through a devastating breakup, severe grief, or, an irreversible life change.
Right.
Our immediate instinct is usually to flood them with unhelpful advice to try and fix the situation, largely so we don't have to feel helpless watching them cry.
Totally. The hot stove reflex.
Exactly. But what if, instead of trying to be their mechanic, trying to force the shattered glass back together, we just practiced relational endurance? What if we resisted the urge to solve their problem and simply stayed present in the mess with them?
It's a deeply challenging shift, relinquishing the need to be the savior and instead choosing to be a steadfast, unflinching companion in the dark.
Sometimes proving to someone that their pain won't scare you away is the greatest act of love we can offer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.